Hello and welcome to Uzreport World News, and my name is Bahram Gafarov. Uzbek and Kyrgyz governments have resolved the disputed border sections as delegations of both states met in Tashkent on March 24 and 25. According to Kamilbek Tasheyev, the head of the Kyrgyz security services, issues around the Kyrgyz-Uzbek border have now completely been resolved.
Kyrgyz President Sadir Japarov, while meeting with his Uzbek counterpart Shavkat Mirziyoyev earlier in March, said that it might take up to 3 months to resolve outstanding demarcation differences. The completion of this task in less than a month is yet another worth-to-mention fact. One passage involved the territory of Sokh, an Uzbek exclave that is home to 85,000 people but entirely surrounded by Kyrgyzstan. Under the agreement, the two nations have committed to open multiple checkpoints that will admit cars and minibuses. Another strand of the agreement has involved numerous land swaps. After 2 days of discussion, they gave us 8,000 hectares of land, said Kamilbek Tasheyev, that is several villages and land for cattle. As you know, there have often been clashes along the Gavasai River. Now this land goes entirely to Kyrgyzstan. There will be no more clashes.
On the following day, the Uzbek and Kyrgyz governments announced their intention to accelerate the launch of China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan Railway and increase the cargo transportation along the Andijan-Osh-Saritash-Irkeshtam multimodal corridor. This issue was on the agenda of negotiations between the Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev and Kyrgyz Prime Minister Ulug'bek Maripov.
Having talked about the trade issues, both sides have agreed to promote new projects in the fields of industry, energy, agriculture, and water management, launching a $50 million worth investment fund, as well as expanding interregional and cultural exchanges. The Kyrgyz Prime Minister expressed his full readiness to make every effort for the unconditional implementation of the agreements reached between the two countries.
Uzbekistan has received another loan in a bid to overcome the negative consequences of the pandemic. Japan has become a new lender. The country of rising sun has announced its intention to allocate funds totaling $137 million to support the country's response to COVID-19 crisis and contribute its social and economic stability. The exchange note was signed between Japanese Ambassador Yoshinori Fujiyama and the Uzbek Deputy Finance Minister Odilbek Isakov on Friday. The funds are to be provided at 0.01% per annum for 15 years with a 4-year grace period. The global recession caused by COVID-19 pandemic as well as an economic response have triggered a surge in debt levels in Uzbekistan. According to the country's central bank, the total external debt at the end of 2020 amounted to over $33 billion, growing by almost $9 billion or 37% during the year.
Uzbekistan was among many countries in the world forced to raise loans to mitigate the COVID-19 related risks. Part of the lending was channeled towards the state programs for the development of economic sectors and regions. The private sector raised funds totaling $5.5 billion, with its debt soaring by $3.7 billion. A lion's share of loans were utilized in the public and banking sectors.
Uzbekistan has received 1 million doses of Chinese Uzbek vaccine. The country is planning to produce it starting from May, after finishing the third phase of testing.
The vaccine ZFUZ-VAC 2001 was developed by the Institute of Microbiology of the Chinese Academy of Sciences and Zhifei Lancome Biopharmaceutical. Uzbekistan has been named a co-author of the vaccine for its contribution to its trials. The vaccine is believed to be 6 times better against British and South African strains than the American Moderna.
Uzbekistan's Ministry of Preschool Education is intending to introduce Korean mobile platform designed for children from 3 to 7 years of age. The project worth some $500,000 at no cost to the Republic. This was discussed by the Minister of Preschool Education, Agrippina Shin, and a Korean delegation chaired by the first deputy chairman of the Korean Uzbek Business Association under the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy of the Republic of Korea, Kim Chan-kyun.
So far, the EduLink program has been successfully adopted in the Republic of Korea, in Indonesia with its 50 million users, and the Socialist Republic of Vietnam with 8 million users. Talks are underway to implement the program in the Kingdom of Cambodia, In Uzbekistan, the platform will be designed for children from 3 to 7 years of age and include foreign language learning tools. As noted, the database will contain English, Russian, Korean languages and mathematics. The tutorials will be animated and content-based videos will help improve the skills of educators and attract parents to the learning process. At the end of the meetings, the parties signed a memorandum of cooperation. The preliminary launch of the project is scheduled for the 1st of September 2021.
Uzbekistan's higher educational establishments will soon introduce new programs on medicine developed jointly with U.S. University of Pittsburgh. Besides, it's projected to establish cooperation with NUKU's branch of Tashkent Pediatric Medical Institute, according to Uzbek ambassador to the USA and Canada, Javlan Vahabov, and the deputy rector for academic and global affairs of the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine, Dr. Margaret MacDonald.
The parties discussed inter-academic cooperation between the two countries in updating educational programs and improving the quality of staff training. Besides, it is projected to implement cooperative learning between the U.S. University School of Medicine and Uzbek schools, including higher educational establishments in the Karkalpak region. According to Dr. Margaret MacDonald, the grant support by American consuls under the UNICEN program strengthens U.S. cooperation with Uzbekistan's medical universities. She suggested that the U.S. has to enhance cooperation with the Republic's Ministry of Health as well as the Ministry of Higher and Secondary Specialized Education. This will help better localize U.S. medical education programs in Uzbekistan. With this in mind, on May 16th, Uzbekistan will receive the delegation of the university chaired by the Vice Rector of the School of Medicine, Margaret MacDonald. Several meetings will be held with the leadership of the NUKU's branch of the Tashkent Pediatric Medical Institute.
The European Union will keep AstraZeneca doses within the bloc until the company has fulfilled its delivery commitments to the EU. Internal Market Commissioner Thierry Breton spoke on Friday during a visit to a Barcelona pharmaceutical plant.
We will make sure that everything stays in Europe until the company will come back to its commitments. And this is why we have this instrument that the President of the Commission yesterday again put in place to make sure that we control and we don't have any leakage, if I may say so.
On Wednesday, the EU tightened its oversight of coronavirus vaccine exports, giving it greater scope to block shipments to countries with higher inoculation rates, such as Britain, or which are not sharing the doses they produce.
We have now in Europe 52 factories working, including this one. They are working extremely hard. This will make our continent probably the first continent in terms of vaccines production by the end of this year, giving us a capacity to produce between 2 to 3 billion doses.
Breton also said Europe should have vaccinated enough people in the summer, possibly around mid-July, to achieve a global immunity level.
A coalition of civil rights groups filed a federal lawsuit against Georgia's new voting restrictions. They say the Republican-backed law signed by Governor Brian Kemp Thursday is intended to make it harder for people to vote, especially black voters. The law imposes limits like stricter ID requirements for voters, it shortens the early voting period for runoff elections, and makes it a misdemeanor crime for people to offer food and water to voters waiting in line. President Joe Biden on Friday accused Republicans in Georgia of attacking voting rights.
It's an atrocity. The idea, if you want any indication that it has nothing to do with fairness, nothing to do with decency, they pass a law saying you can't provide water for people standing in line while they're waiting to vote. You don't need anything else to know that this is nothing but punitive, designed to keep people from voting.
Biden also said the Justice Department was taking a look at Georgia's new law. The legislation comes just months after Democrats celebrated historic wins in Georgia, helping the party win the White House and gain razor-thin control of the U.S. Senate. It's one of more than 250 bills Republicans have filed nationwide, proposing new voting limits since former President Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. Republicans say new voting restrictions are necessary.
There's no way we lost Georgia.
After Trump spent months falsely blaming his loss on voter fraud.
Significant reforms to our state elections were needed.
Moments after signing Georgia's bill, Governor Kemp reiterated that stance.
With Senate Bill 202, Georgia will take another step toward ensuring our elections are secure, accessible, and fair.
But Democrats cried foul. Park Cannon, a state representative from Georgia, was arrested Thursday for knocking on the door of Kemp's office as he signed the bill.
For what? Under arrest for what?
Once released, she tweeted, "I am not the first Georgian to be arrested for fighting voter suppression. I'd love to say I'm the last, but we know that isn't true."
Just days after acknowledging for the first time that Eritrean troops had crossed into Ethiopia's northern Tigray region, and Abiy Ahmed now says they'll be leaving. The Ethiopian Prime Minister, in Asmara for talks with President Isaias Afwerki, tweeted on Friday that Ethiopian forces had agreed to withdraw from the border region. His statement did not address the widespread allegations that Eritrean soldiers have killed, raped and tortured civilians. Ethiopia's government declared victory over Tigray's former ruling party, the TPLF, in late November, but fighting has continued in some areas. Thousands have been killed and hundreds of thousands displaced. The TPLF dominated Ethiopian politics for decades before Abiy came to power and has long been an enemy of Eritrea. On Thursday, the United Nations said more than 500 cases of rape had been reported to 5 clinics in the region. They included gang rape, rape in front of family members, and men being forced to rape their own family members under threat of violence. The UN said stigma and a lack of health services meant the number of victims was likely to be much higher. This week, Abiy said any Ethiopian soldier who committed rape would be held accountable. Ethiopia's UN ambassador said the government takes allegations of sexual violence very seriously and had deployed a fact-finding mission. Eritrea's information minister and foreign minister did not respond to requests for comment.
One way to beat the lockdown blues? More cheese. That's the French way, at least, as sales in the country soared by more than 8% in 2020, compared with just 2% the year before, with shuttered restaurants leaving French shoppers salivating more than ever for their beloved Brie, Camembert, and Roquefort, just to name a few. Véronique Richer-Lerouge is president of France's Local Cheeses Association.
The French maintained and even compensated in a way for the lack of sales in restaurants by their high consumption, higher than usual. For example, we see that for goat cheese, consumption is up by 32%. Camembert is up 2%. Comté is up 8%.
Raclette, a winter favorite served melted with potatoes and meats, jumped 12%. Even sales of mozzarella, a southern Italian cheese, rose by 21%. Augustin Denou is owner of a cheese shop in Boulogne-Billancourt, France.
In our little way, we've helped prevent people from being completely gloomy. There's that moment of pleasure at the dinner table with good wine, good bread, and good cheese, when you forget everything for an hour.
Cheese has even fared better than another traditional French favorite, champagne, in a year bereft of celebrations. Nicolas is a cheese shop regular.
This is typically one of the pleasures we still have access to, with an unimaginable diversity just like wine. You only need to see the display here. It takes you on a journey.
A broad selection is key, especially with Saturday being France's National Cheese Day.
In the dry soil of northern Burkina Faso, a man and his sons plant a tree. The man is Yakuba Sawadogo, the tree just one in a 100-acre forest that he's built over 4 decades. It's a monument to his dedication to protect the area from the advancing tide of desertification. And it's part of the reason why he's known as the man who stopped the desert.
This tree that I have planted will produce a lot of shade. It will also bear fruit, which will benefit people and animals. It's a really good tree.
In the 1980s, people in the semi-rural city of Ouagadougou started feeling the effects of climate change. Sawadogo describes how the desert spread. Subsistence farmers in this arid part of the Sahel rely on the rain, but when it lessened and became more erratic, crops started to fail, Animals and trees died.
The forest you see here today, it was a real desert before. There was no umbrage or shadow from a single tree right here.
Rather than flee, as others did, Sawadogo focused on improving the local zai technique. Traditionally, farmers start cultivating in the wet season. Zai involves preparing the land well in advance. Sawadogo and his sons dig holes filled with compost to catch moisture before the rains, and they also build rock walls to direct water to the seeds. As he's constantly refined the technique, he's passed on what he learned. The United Nations Environment Programme says though zai is labour-intensive, it's increased production for farmers in the area by 100 to 150%. Sawadogo also uses the technique to plant trees, which he says have been crucial to reducing the effects of climate change. His forest contains more than 60 species of bushes and trees, as well as medicinal herbs that he distributes to the local community.
It is my love of trees that pushed me to invest in this forest, because I know that trees can bring so much to the life of man. Trees strengthen the beauty of life.
Sawadogo's efforts were recently rewarded when he was named one of the UNEP's 6 Champions of the Earth 2020. But the 7-year-old says he can't save the environment on his own, and farmers are still facing rising temperatures in an increasingly unforgiving land. Nevertheless, he's an example of how the planet can be repaired through the planting of trees and allowing knowledge to take root.
Another tech firm has joined the race to make electric vehicles. This time it's Chinese smartphone maker Xiaomi. Sources told Reuters that Xiaomi plans to make the cars using Great Wall's factory in China. Great Wall is also said to be providing engineering consultancy to speed up the project, with Xiaomi aiming to launch its first EV by 2023. News of the potential tie-up sent shares in both companies up as much as 9% and 15% respectively. Xiaomi has been looking to diversify its revenue streams from the smartphone business. It accounts for the bulk of its income but carries razor-thin profit margins. The company has also been hampered by the global chip shortage. Xiaomi joins a number of tech companies trying to leap into the car industry. Both Huawei and Apple are reported to be planning electric vehicles, with Apple potentially launching its offering as soon as 2024.
A directionless week on Wall Street ended with broad gains in a late afternoon surge Friday as investors picked up stocks of companies that stand to benefit most from an economic recovery. Value stocks, which include energy and materials stocks, provided the biggest lift, but even tech stocks joined the rally. And so, the S&P 500 gained 1.7%, while the Dow added 1.4%. The Nasdaq was the laggard with a 1.2% rise. For the week, the Dow and S&P rose more than 1%, but the tech-rich Nasdaq lost ground. Value stocks have been outperforming technology and other growth stocks this year, as economists predict an acceleration in economic expansion. Carson Wealth CEO Ron Carson, a Barron's Hall of Fame advisor, advises clients to boost their exposure to value stocks.
But I would start to shift, especially with rates moving up. Value stocks are really in a position to do better. They've done, relatively speaking, when you compare to growth, they haven't done so hot over the last decade. I definitely we're reducing our exposure to growth, increasing our exposure to value.
Bank stocks like Bank of America and U.S. Bancorp rose as the Fed said it would lift income-based restrictions on bank dividends and share buybacks for most firms in June. L Brands jumped almost 4%. The owner of lingerie retailer Victoria's Secret raised its profit forecast for the second time this month. It's benefiting as consumers spend their stimulus checks at their stores. U.S. consumer spending dropped last month, but economists expect it to bounce back, thanks to a new round of those stimulus checks and warmer weather. Shares of NIO skidded nearly 5%. The Chinese maker of electric vehicles became the latest automaker to announce it's temporarily halting production at a plant due to a shortage of semiconductor chips.
So far, these have been the latest news for today. Goodbye, take care.